All right, one attendee. Hi, everybody in Zoom land. We'll just give it a second for folks to trickle in here. All right, we could go ahead and get started and then have folks join as this thing gets rolling. So on behalf of the University of California, Riverside, thank you for tuning in today for our virtual Industry Insights event focused on the arts. My name is Nikolai Maslov, UCR class of 2008, and currently I'm curator of film and media projects at UCR Arts. UCR Arts is the two art museums that UCR has in downtown, so the California Museum of Photography and the Culver Center of the Arts. And typically these events are in person, and they allow folks to gain a better insight into various industries from accomplished UCR alumni. With this transition to virtual events, these events have moved online, giving us the ability to reach larger audiences of not only alumni, but students and staff as well. And today we'll be diving into the topic of the arts and hearing from 4 graduates who have all experienced a variety of fields, from theater to playwriting to visual arts, museum curating. So it'll be a very exciting conversation. And this program is made possible by the UCR Alumni Association. So if you're not currently a member of the Alumni Association, I encourage you to become one and take advantage of all the opportunities your membership offers. Almost done, I promise. Throughout today's session, you'll have an opportunity to ask questions of our speakers by clicking the Q&A in the bottom of your screen. We'll try to answer as many as we can during the second half of the event. And also, we'll be recording the session and we'll send it out in a follow-up email. So with that said, I'm so pleased to be joined by our 4 panelists, Lauren Lockhart, Jason Hoover, Kieran Mccrory, and Wakan Wusa. So we'll start with a few of the questions we received in advance of the event. But before we do that, I just want to invite our panelists to introduce themselves, say a few words about their backgrounds and what they're doing professionally. So we'll start in alpha order and start with Lauren.
Great. Thanks so much, Nikolai. And thank you, UCR, for inviting us to be a part of this panel. Really excited to reconnect with lots of Highlanders. My name is Lauren Lockhart. I'm the arts program manager currently for San Diego International Airport. I've been there for just over 7 years now. At the airport, we actually have a robust performing arts, exhibitions, and public art program. And my work is focused primarily on managing the commissioning of large-scale, permanent, integrated public art projects for the airport campus. That's everywhere from the terminals to our parking structure to our rental car facilities, really focused on finding ways to integrate all different kinds of arts into all aspects of the airport so that we can improve the customer experience by surprising and delighting our travelers with art where they might not expect it, and also enhancing the airport architecture and really humanizing that space. I finished my graduate degree at UCR in art history in 2008, and I'm excited to be back to reconnect with you all.
Great. And can I also just ask everyone to say where they're tuning in from? It's always interesting to hear where everyone is at a given moment. Lauren, you're currently in San Diego, I presume?
I am. I'm in San Diego, and I'm very rarely in the office these days, though I got to help welcome back one of our flights from Japan, which hadn't been operating for quite some time. So I got to come in today for a little bit.
Oh, fantastic. Next up, we have Jason. Welcome, Jason.
Hi, thanks for having me. So my name is Jason Hoover. I'm a UCR graduate from 2005. I currently reside in San Francisco, California, where I am the former artistic director of Ray of Light Theater, which was a small indie theater company that specialized in producing musical theater, rock musical theater. And I am the current managing director at the Palace of Fine Arts Theater, which is located in the historic Palace of Fine Arts, which is the big dome that you see as you cross the Golden Gate Bridge and head over to Marin and Sausalito. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Next up, we have Kieran.
Hi, everybody. I'm Kieran Mccrory. I got my MFA in playwriting at UCR back in 2017. I'm primarily a playwright, but I do a bunch of stuff in the theater. Right now, I'm an adjunct professor at Mount San Antonio College here in Southern California, which is also where I'm tuning in from, Pomona, CA. I am a literary manager for a very small theater company, Vanguard Rep. We opened up a small arts center over in Atlanta, Georgia, back in 2017 as well, the Windmill Arts Center. I'm also the Region 8 NPP, that's the National Playwriting Program, co-vice chair with the Kennedy Center American College Theater Festival. And I'm super excited to be here tonight.
Welcome, Kieran. And last but not least, we have Waka. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks to UCR for having us tonight, and like just echoing everyone's sentiments. It's really awesome to be back and reconnect with the university in this way and give back and share our experiences. So I'm Waka Anwusa. I'm currently reporting from Fontana, California, from my parents' house. So got out of Cleveland and escaped some of the winter weather. So really grateful for that. So currently in Fontana, but I graduated in 2008 as a sociology major, changed my major twice. But I, started my museum career at the Grammy Museum right when I graduated in 2008 and have been there for 10 years and curated some really awesome exhibits and got an amazing opportunity there, and found my way to Cleveland, Ohio, to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, where I'm now the chief curator and vice president of curatorial affairs, which means that I oversee our curatorial division, which is a department that develops and just creates all sorts of amazing exhibitions. We acquire artifacts to our permanent and temporary collections. And I also oversee our library and archives, which is over 40,000 rare and unique artifacts. So it's a really phenomenal and amazing team who really love music. So we tell stories that are inspired by music, and music is a fabric of our lives, which is really exciting. So getting to touch some really great artists, but really getting a chance to tell some great stories. So that's who I am. And thank you so much for having me tonight.
And so I think my first question will be a very obvious one, since we're about 2 weeks removed from the 1-year anniversary of lockdown. It was Friday the 13th. That evening, we were supposed to screen Parasite at the museum. We had a sold out crowd and a panel discussion. And it's like, okay, we're closing, but don't worry, we'll be back in 2 weeks. And then here we are a year later. And so I'm just curious how the respective institutions you all have been with have navigated COVID-19, how you yourself professionally have, and the kind of support you found from the creative industries you're in related, how that has helped you navigate COVID. And we'll do this in reverse order. So we'll start with Waka.
Ooh, okay. So yeah, I remember being in my office as well. Like, where were you when COVID-19 it's so crazy what a tidal wave this thing has created for all of us. It's like, sadly, making the reference to 9/11, it's like, where were you on 9/11? It's like, where were you when COVID-19 was announced? So for me, and being at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, we're an institution that truly thrives on tourism. So, and especially international tourism. We see at least 1 million visitors a year coming through, and it's through the conventions that come to the city, through the baseball games, not the football games, but to the baseball games and to some of the scenes around. But I mean, there's a huge, museum track that runs across this country. And especially through the Midwest into the South. I mean, we're all connected, and that just suddenly stopping for the museum was a huge impact. I mean, we've all experienced, unfortunately, furloughs in our institutions. We had to let over 120 some odd folks go from the museum, which is already, we're all coming from the arts. Like, being in a nonprofit, it's not that big of a staff to begin with, to accomplish what you need to accomplish. So to lose those members, those soldiers of our team, it really hurt. So having to pivot to digital platforms like we're doing right now, we've had to really do that. So when we think about our education programs, how we launch our exhibitions, how we do music programs, and how do we engage musicians? We're also in the music business as well as being in the museum business. And, so yes, our curation, our whole department is at a halt, but then there's artists who aren't touring the country, touring the globe anymore. That's a part of our business. And so just feeling the impacts of that with concerts being canceled across the country, just continued postponements. It was really something that we felt from both spectrums in our industries when we sit in a unique place. And I think we all kind of sit in a unique place. Lauren, like you're in the airport industry and you're a museum. Like we all have these unique facets where we interweave in together. So definitely it really showed us that we're all in this together. How do we find ways to connect and inspire? And I'll just shut up because I think I'm getting excited, but I'll leave it there.
And so Lauren, working for an airport, something that I think most people don't think of as being closed really ever, right? How was that moment like for you and the staff there?
It's been really challenging, of course, like everyone. Obviously, our work is completely intertwined with the travel industry. And so that took an unprecedented hit at our very lowest point. Our travel was down 97%. So it was very trying. And we've started to tick up quite a bit, but we're nowhere near where we used to be. San Diego's a tourist destination. And we especially, our performing arts program obviously took a hit, just like Waka was sharing. That's so important to the identity of our program to have. We were up to 4 or 5 performances a week in the terminals, on the curbside area, in the baggage claim. And that was just such a joyful thing. You've landed and you're waiting for your bags and you're surprised by a puppetry performance or a great local band. And that's been devastating to not be able to continue to support and elevate our local artists in that way. We've been able to start to chip back a little bit, bring back some of that budget as travel picks up. And so we had some roaming carolers around the holidays, and we've just had a conversation as a team today about trying to bring back in some outdoor performances as travel picks up, but it's been difficult. We also have not been able to turn over our exhibition. That program was completely put on hold, but looking towards the summer, hopefully we'll be able to turn that over. But that's been hard too, because it's another program where we're celebrating the work of local cultural organizations we partner with, local artists. And so we've done our best to try to find other ways to continue to celebrate the work of those individuals and other ways we can support them.
And Kieran, being a playwright and professor with essentially no audience or virtual audience, how's that been for you?
Yeah, the irony for me was really solidified right at the start of the pandemic, because I was teaching a couple different theater classes, and I had just spent a good week and a half talking about how theater has to be live for it to be theater, and then everything went virtual, and nothing was live. It has obviously hurt the theater industry. The theater industry and museums are really two of the primary art forms that you have to go to experience. We don't really have other forms to experience those art forms. So I do think there might be some upsides from the pandemic in terms of greater access and sort of finding new ways to get different art forms sort of into people's homes. I think that's really great, but it's been rough. You can't make it. Everything is, it's like trying to relearn an art form all over again, because it is not the same thing that you have been trained in or that you have done or that you have, theater's all about problem solving, thankfully. So, I think within the theater community, we sort of have this joke that, like, if anybody can figure out how to do this, it's gonna be us, because we have to figure things out all the time. But I do think, I think the thing I'm keeping my fingers crossed for, and this is maybe jumping around too, I'm really hoping that once we are sort of out of this, and once vaccinations have sort of taken a greater hold, and once we're out in the world again, I really hope we can carry all this desperate longing for the arts that we do back into our everyday lives. So hopefully there'll be a bigger upside to all of this, but it definitely has hurt palpably the theater industry as well.
And to continue our sort of survey of the theater industry and COVID-19, Jason, how have the institutions you've been a part of been faring the last year?
Yeah, I think what Kieran said is really spot on when it comes to, I mean, we all know that this is awful. I think that goes without saying. I don't want to hash on that too much, but I think there is a strong hope. And I think you see it with, I'll use outdoor dining as an example. You go outside and you see a lot of people dining outdoors because they're looking for that. They want that. And I think that's a prime example of what we're going to see when theater or music or any sort of indoor venue opens back up, that people are thirsty for it and they're ready to go back out and seek it, as long as we can establish and prove that what we are presenting is safe. So for us, the shutdown obviously has been detrimental to our business and to everyone's, mental health who works there. We've been fortunate enough at the Palace of Fine Arts to receive a PPP loan. And I think our venue, along with a lot of other venues, are really looking forward to and now applying increased pressure on this shuttered venue operator grant and the necessity for that in lots of venues, not just theater venues, but, we're talking smaller clubs and things like that are just barely holding on. And the sooner that comes around, the better for these groups. So that's really where we stand right now, understanding that, yes, there is help on the horizon and that we are closer today than we were a month ago to where we all want and need to be. So I'm trying not to dwell on the hard part that we're not able to make things and be in person, and the fact that we're closer than we've ever been, and we're going to get there.
Yeah, great, thank you. And you kind of pivoting back to UC Riverside, sort of the pitch for humanities or an arts and education was that it helps prepare you for a dynamic, changing world and kind of new emerging technologies. At least that's what I told my parents when I switched from biology to English, and hopefully somewhat vindicated. And so I know all of us sort of, graduated at various times and had different career paths. So kind of connecting this moment when you graduated UCR to where you are now, kind of what are some of the ways you found the education you had at UCR or the community of UCR gets you to where you are now? So let's start with Jason with this one.
Yeah, when it comes to theater, you're never going to have the resources outside of college that you had in college. The moment you get outside, and Kieran understands this, the moment you get outside of college, you are dropped into a world where it's literally bubblegum and baling wire to try to put together shows and put together art. And with my experience at UCR, we were given the resources to try a lot of different things. Not necessarily saying I took advantage of all of those, but they were all offered, and we had the opportunity to try to learn how to costume, to learn how to light. So you had the ability to expand your personal toolbox and then take that out in the world. So that was one of the most beneficial things that I found when I got out in the quote unquote real world, was that we had learned a ton of things and that we were mentally prepared to be dropped into a situation where, no, you're just going to have to figure this stuff out as you go along. And that's part of the fun of it.
And on the topic of figuring things out for the sort of class of 08, like myself, who had the fortune of graduating into a sort of once in a lifetime recession, and now we're in a once in a lifetime pandemic, kind of like these once in a lifetime events just keep happening, right? So Walker, how did you find that moment of graduating into that moment of uncertainty and then navigating your professional career and then going into graduate school and eventually getting to where you are now?
Yeah, I would also have to say theater saved my life in a way too. So I was actually working in the fine arts theater in the box office. So Kieran, maybe Jason, you remember Dave and like, yeah. Oh my God. So yes, theater life. So, so I worked in the box office, worked with Dave and some of the guys behind the scenes, and every now and again, and so I was right behind you. So we barely missed each other, Jason. I started working in the theater in 06 and 07 and 08 and transitioned then, but would help out every now and again, try my chops on the catwalk or whatever. All this to say, Ticketmaster was the form of ticketing that we were using at the time to build shows, and I was educating myself in that. In 2008, like you said, where are you going to find a job? I mean, I'm feeling it. Again, there's positives. We're not going to harp on this, but it was that feeling okay, 08, we have a new president. Okay, what's going to happen? We have no idea. It was my box office boss at the time, Isabel. You might also remember Isabel too, Jason. I don't know. She kind of transitioned in there, but they were like, hey, Waka, they're opening up this new museum in downtown. You're great with Ticketmaster. They need someone specifically who knows how to build shows for Ticketmaster. And I was like, well, hell, I'll do it. I thought, so I was in my CBEST training. I had just got my certification to substitute teach at Brockton Elementary School down the street from UCR. Was doing that and then commuting to Los Angeles, to downtown. So I got that job part-time at the Grammy Museum. My passion was in education, loved what I saw in theater. I mean, I didn't grow up having a chance to go to theater. Sure, we went to museums and things like that, but I didn't grow up around it. So I loved all of those theater shows. I mean, I was in the green room, I would help and get the snacks for the green room and eat snacks during the, when the artists were on stage because we didn't have time for dinner. But we had to stay till the end of the show. I mean, all of those things, I learned so much from that experience. And it was those bosses who told me to just go out on a limb, work this job. You never know where it could take you. And it was the Grammy Museum. That's where I truly learned, hey, I can institute my passion for education. I love music. I love the arts. I can do this together in a museum. And that was my first inkling of those directors and my guidance counselors at UCR saying, take the chance. I'm like, I mean, not that this is beneath me, but I'm going to work at the box office again. I just thought I wanted to, do something a little bit better, but I did it. I did that job thanks to my box office manager at the Fine Arts Theater, to Isabel, to my guidance counselors who were just just go for it. You're looking at someone who changed their major as well. I was philosophy, law, and society and switched over to sociology in my junior year. Just take a chance. But that's what UCR encouraged me to do. It's if you found, I've stayed in touch with some of my professors even till this day because they impacted my life just that much. And that's the special thing about UCR. Those professors are teaching from a place of passion and love, and that just changed the course of my life. So that's why UCR will always anyway, I could go on about it, but theater saved my life. I started in the box office.
And Lauren, how was graduating in 08 with, it was your graduate degree in art history, right? To navigating, the past decade or so to where you are now?
So I similarly had, an amazing experience at UCR, really, really supportive, small cohort that I was a part of. And I agree with what the other panelists have shared, that felt like there was support for me to experiment and try different things. And I'm recalling now that some of my colleagues and I, we're, as you are when you're getting your master's, you're kind of heads down working on your niche topic and you're so embedded within it. Then we thought it would be good for us to have a connection to the MFA students in visual art and be able to write about their work that they're making, something that's truly contemporary, and also just have some more dialogue across our two different departments. And the faculty supported it, and the Sweeney Gallery supported it. Jennifer Frias, who was there for so long, was instrumental in helping us find a way to facilitate that dialogue, set up a panel discussion for us, which is the first time for most of us to be a part of something like that. So it was a huge real world learning experience for us. And not to jump ahead, because I think we were going to talk about Gluck, but the Gluck Fellowship was also just a tremendous learning experience for me. So even though, yes, we came out into a really difficult market, I took an internship. I had done internships, I was looking for full-time work, of course, but I took an internship at the National Gallery, knowing that it was short term, but it gave me incredible connections, and I continued to learn, and ultimately was able to find full-time work and come back to San Diego. So yeah, nothing but positive memories there.
And then Kieran, being our most recent grad from UCR, how's the recent switch from MFA to professor been?
Yeah, echoing what Lauren said, it is a little different when you're a graduate student on campus, because I had been working professionally in a couple different things for a few years. I was going back to get my MFA primarily so I could teach at the college level, which was what I wanted to do. And I was living in Glendora so it was a 50-minute drive minimum, one way. So there was a lot of driving. And the MFA program is only a 2-year program. So 2 or 3 years, there's an optional 3rd year. So my time really flew by there. It felt like a fever dream. But what I originally loved about the MFA at UCR also echoes what everyone has said about it, because it was one of the few interdisciplinary MFAs that I could find. Specifically for writers, most of the time you're looking at very concentrated MFAs where you're only seeing the same people, you're only taking classes within your genre. And I'm a polymath, I always have been. So I really like the connection between things and utilizing lots of different forms and lots of different skills. And so the interdisciplinary nature of that MFA program was a really great turning point for me in terms of my writing career, because I had written a couple other sort of forms, but I primarily considered myself a playwright. But I got to take a screenwriting class, and I got to take some, creative writing classes with the really amazing faculty. And, the downside, I think, to it is that because it's such a great, rare program, other people don't really know how to interpret that MFA, because you do usually get MFAs in a very specific thing. But for my experience, it was everything I could have asked for in terms of sort of being catered to me and what I was interested in, how I was interested in learning. And then, yeah, the resources are great, even for the graduate students. Jason is 100% right. Theater is never better than when you are the student in a theater school making theater. That is the easiest it's ever going to be, because people want you to do it. They're there to help you. You've got the resources at your disposal. So UCR was great even for that, because of how connected everything is. The MFA would do the theater film department would do a film every semester. And one semester I submitted a script and it was mine that they produced. So I got a 10-minute film that was produced and had a famous cinematographer working on it, which will probably be the only thing of mine that ever gets produced on film, and it was great. So yeah, everything everyone has said, so it's interconnected. I think they really do put a lot of emphasis on connections with people. And I think they foster a bigger sense of campus community between disciplines.
Yeah, there's definitely an underscored interdisciplinary community at UCR. And for myself, I went to grad school at USC right after. So I sort of had the A/B test of, UCR to USC, and a lot of good things to say obviously about USC, but you sort of see the sort of, I don't want to say corporatized in a bad sense, but it's sort of an institution where it's just like, whereas UCR, there's more of a community and the professors, know your name, which is not to say they don't at other schools, but there's sort of more of you have a sense that people are looking out for you maybe in the way that is uncommon at other universities, and people come in with the intention of working with you. And I think it's just great to hear that echoed all around here. And as one of you mentioned, we'll pivot to a Gluck question. It's the 25th anniversary of Gluck at UCR, and I know some of you were Gluck fellows. So for those of you that were, could you tell us a little bit about your experience with Gluck at UCR, and how did it prepare you for your journey? Whoever was a Gluck fellow, you could start us off.
I'm happy to jump in. So I did the Gluck Fellowship both years of my MA program, but I remember even just applying for the program thinking this is a really unique opportunity, and what a, first of all, amazing to have some funding, financial support, which you need in the program. But then I love the idea of having a community connection, again, not just being so head down, focused on your own work, which is important, but then it forced me to think about how can I translate some of the research that I'm doing into an accessible format, into something that could be used in a K through 12 environment. For one of the years I worked with, I think, 6th graders, and the next year I worked with high school students, and both brought different challenges for me, but it solidified for me a love of education. And so I actually continued to work in museum education, and even today, I've pushed hard that the arts program at the airport have a community outreach aspect to our work, and I'm constantly trying to find ways to engage youth in our programming and get them thinking about careers in airport design and arts in an airport and public spaces. So that definitely contributed to my career path in that way.
Yeah, I also did Gluck and similar things. I think that teaching, you have to be so adaptable, or at least in my opinion, that's something that makes you a good teacher, is the ability to adapt to what you're facing. And Gluck, I only did my 2nd year right before I went out into the world of teaching. So it was very useful for exactly that thing that you cannot practice outside of the real life situation of standing in front of a classroom full of high schoolers and trying to make it through the lesson that you prepared. And the second thing that I'll say is not to knock on high schoolers, but I was pretty sure I wanted to teach college level, and trying to teach high schoolers right at the end of my MFA really solidified for me that high school teachers are a godsend, and the good ones that are out there do amazing work that I am not capable of doing. The kids were great. They were so sweet. It was more so, you forget what high school is like until you're back in a high school classroom. And I will never forget what high school was like after my Gluck experience.
Do we have anyone else that was part of Gluck?
Yeah, I did it. I had the exact same thing. I mean, when you're a starving college student, getting $1,000 is key. Let's be frank, it's awesome. But having the opportunity to actually be in charge of something was really key. It's a really good skill that isn't necessarily something that you're going to get directly in a college class. So being able to have a practical application of the things that you're learning and then go out and teach them and be in charge of something was a wonderful skill. That's definitely something that I've carried over into management now.
Yeah. And it's just also great that there's an avenue for funding for public arts. I think all of us are related to arts in the public in one way. And I think all of us, even in our, relatively short careers in the field, have seen funding dry up or funding sources change, and even seeing sort of public art that isn't tied to corporate event, or there's no kind of hashtag that's, advocating you for some kind of product launch, that's sort of refreshing in and of itself. So I think those things are very valuable. And we'll shift over to audience questions. We have 2 here, so we'll start with our first one. Is there any advice for getting your foot in the door of your field of work right now? And maybe for those of you that work with institutions and have interns or had to scale back internship programs, or working with people just starting off in their field. So I'll start with Waka. How does the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame manage folks trying to get into the museum industry, especially during this time?
Yes, you mentioned internships. And then, just even job postings now as we're, adapting. Kieran, as you said, just having to be adaptable during this time, we found unique ways to continue to be, productive, efficient, and still even grow because of just new discoveries. So the unique thing now, like I'm in Fontana, the great thing is I can be here and working remotely. So those positions, if you have an interest in, a career in a music museum, still apply. It goes again to everything we've all been saying, taking a risk, taking a chance, thinking outside of the box, go for it. It may not make sense on paper, but go ahead and try. The internships that we're actually providing now, if you just go to rockhall.com, shameless plug, go there and you can see opportunities. And so we have paid internships that are available and I believe are posted now. So those opportunities are always listed and you can virtually do it from anywhere in the country. So yes.
Fantastic. And same question to Jason.
Yeah, in terms of venue management, obviously right now is a weird time to try to get into that because venues aren't really being managed. Well, they're being managed, they're just not operating right now. But if you're looking to get into, let's say, any sort of acting field or artistic directing, or, just like your feet on the stage and stuff like that, it's a great time just to start sending your stuff out to companies. Because companies have nothing better to do right now than to go through your headshots, to go through your resumes. So it's just like anything else. It's pounding the pavement, but now it's pounding the digital pavement. So you just have to get your stuff out there and keep pushing on it. Gone, at least right now, are the days of, trying to meet someone at a bar or a coffee shop and chat things through. So the best thing you can do is just get in front of their email and talk to them through those avenues.
And then sort
Nikolai,
of...
sorry,
yeah.
I just wanted to offer a thought related as well. I've been getting a lot of requests recently for informational interviews. I always make time whenever I can. I think that's a great way for you to just kind of pick the brain of someone in a career path that you're interested in. Also make sure that's the path that you want to head down, because hopefully they'll be honest with you and you can see, oh, I don't know, that sounds like more administrative than I thought it was going to be, which all arts admin is, but you get to learn a little bit of insider knowledge about what the career is like. So I encourage you to do that. Even if there's not something posted in a specific institution you're interested in, reach out to the individual who has the job that you think you would love and see if they're willing to take some time. That's one silver lining too of this environment that we're in. I'm doing a lot of those interviews right now, and it's nice to see someone's face and then understand what they're looking for. And if something pops up later, I try to send them a quick note. Did you see this job posting? I've got them on my radar too.
Yeah, great, thank you. And Kieran.
Yeah, same thing. Never be afraid to just email somebody because worst case scenario, they're a jerk to you and then you never have to worry about them ever again. Best case scenario, someone, responds. And then the other thing that I'll say, this is more of an internal thing. I think it's really important, not that you'll have this answer or that it'll be the right answer permanently, but I think it's really important to think about what kind of thing you want to do, because the more clarity you have about the kind of environment you see yourself in, the kind of work you want to be making, the kind of process you want to be a part of, the better you're going to be able to target what you want, because different places have different, rules and etiquettes and stuff like that. And you can save yourself, specifically in the arts, a lot of heartache and anxiety and agony by just doing some soul searching and really sort of thinking deeply about who you are, what you're good at, and what kind of scene you want to be on.
Yeah, that's a really good point too about, and I think especially in the arts where so many people are quick to take advantage of unpaid labor, kind of knowing your worth, knowing the worth of your time, knowing, what sacrifices you have to make, but also kind of knowing, when people might be trying to take advantage of inexperience or anything else. And I'll just add that, when I was graduating undergrad, I never thought about being a museum curator, but I knew I liked art. I knew I liked museums. I knew I liked making playlists, and I liked the movies as well. And then again, just through putting myself out there and working in those spaces and creative spaces, you meet people and you build communities. And that's how I think a lot of people find jobs or job opportunities. I think it's really rare just to sort of apply to a job, sort of cold call, but it's more so kind of you find things, you kind of get, experience, and you navigate that way. But I think trusting your own intuition about the things you like, that takes you so much further because you're kind of already working with some, wellspring of enthusiasm. And we have another question kind of related to labor and working in these fields is, what do you think of the increase of unionization of arts workers? Good, bad? Does it play a role in your institutions and orgs? We'll start with Lauren.
Sure. So I think it's something that's probably been a long time coming. I mean, I worked in museums for 10 years before moving to the public art field, and had a lot of low paying gigs that, maybe I also worked at Trader Joe's at the same time to pay the bills, and that's not sustainable, right? We want to make sure that we are creating positions that can retain these really talented folks that are manning the front desk and taking care of our visitors at the museums, but not being a little bit removed from the museum field right now. I'll kind of defer to my colleagues who are on the front lines of that conversation.
Yeah. And Waka, how does the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame deal with those issues, or just in your professional experience, have you encountered these issues at other institutions?
Yes, absolutely. I remember going to AAM right before this pandemic, the last one that we had live in New Orleans. And there was a young lady, I'm blanking on her names, something Drew. But anyway, she gave a presentation and she worked at the Met, and essentially she posted her salary. And it was like, the room like gasped, like everyone, because it's a thing that you don't talk about, but we're all talking about, like how much are you making in the museum field? And it was really, was quite offensive. With the impact that she was creating for the museum. Lauren, you mentioned, so many talented people working for these very minuscule wages. And it's great that we're now having these conversations more openly about it, rising this to the top and making it more public. I think that's where we're really starting to see change and seeing, changes happen truly from the top, trickling down. We're seeing more diversity and inclusion initiatives. It's not just about Black or white, it's all about the equity and the equality of salaries from the top down. And so from being a person who started at the box office and worked my way up at that museum for 10 years, to see that, definitely, it was great to have people advocating for better wages. And, you see, changes happening in these boutique situations. But I'm happy to see, the concrete cracking at these larger institutions. And it's like, no more, you're seeing the letters to the Guggenheim. Well, it's on Instagram, like people are calling it out, like no more of this, no more of this. So it's really a beautiful day of reckoning, I think, in the arts and museums. And we're starting to see change. So that's what makes me hopeful, like change is happening. It's happening.
And Kieran and Jason, so unions have been the backbone of at least theater for a long time, and film, obviously a lot of those creative industries. And can you talk about how you've seen that industry sort of navigate those issues, specifically also maybe with relation to COVID-19, where a lot of these issues are coming to a head?
Yeah, sure. I'll go ahead and start. Yeah, I'm all for it. The theater is an institution in this country that is built on the backs of free labor or volunteer labor or underpaid labor. And I think, again, like it's so ingrained into so many of our art forms in this country that the arts are going to suffer while we make these changes. So I would urge us all listening tonight to people need to get paid, right? We know this across industries. This is an American issue right now. There are lots of people who are not being paid for their labor in a wide variety of circumstances. But take the passion that you have for the arts and make sure you find some other place to put it, because we are going to need it when we start stripping, specifically the theater, of internships, of cheaper labor. You're already seeing it with the actors' equity issues that have popped up over the last 5 years, but specifically in COVID-19 with the conversation about streaming theatrical work and what that means. It's definitely it's definitely going to take down some organizations, I think. For me personally, it's always been something that I've been passionate about. The small theater company that I am a part of, that I have been a part of for 5 years, we have always made it a point to pay people coming in a fair and equitable wage. So we are paying them for a part-time job if they are rehearsing with us part-time. We were only able to do that because we weren't paying ourselves, because we all had jobs. So like sacrifices kind of have to be made in one area until we have the governmental institutional support to be able to make some of these changes in a more sort of broader societal way. But I think it can only do good things because honestly, it values art and artists more. And I think that that's a great thing.
And Jason, do you have anything to add?
No, that was pretty all encompassing. I think what Locke said is really important to highlight, that in my opinion, there does need to be a difference between how we are approaching large institutions and how we are approaching boutique institutions when it comes to labor scale, because the labor agreement that you put in place for a large theater should not just be copy and pasted into a small theater. And I think there are some problematic routes that you go down to when all of a sudden you're asking a small nonprofit that's just kind of bootstrapping their way up to use the exact same pay structures and agreements that a large company uses, when there's no way that the community they exist in has that type of funding. So I hope that we get to a point where these agreements can be tailored not just to the theater, but to that community that it exists in. That way people are getting paid a fair and equitable wage, and we're raising that bar and we're constantly pushing it up, but we're not doing it at the problem of stepping on a theater and closing a theater and removing the ability to experience the arts for some people who are just dabbling their toe in it. For some people who, I hate to use the word hobby, because as we all know, these are not hobbies, but eliminating the chance for people to even try to do this stuff because these theaters just can't survive. So I hope that we are able to get to a point where it is not just a unilateral agreement, that there is some give and take across the board so everyone can survive.
And we have 3 sort of related questions that I'll try to fuse into one question. And they are, how do we support the arts right now? How do we become more engaged with the arts right now? And actually, for the sake of not expanding it too far, let's just leave it at those 2. So maybe for those folks trying to engage and support the arts, and obviously we've seen some of these more, crowdsourcing approaches, but what are some other ways people could help and support the arts right now? Is anybody who wants to take a crack at it first?
Donate. I don't know any other way to say it. There's not a lot of things you can see right now, and I think we all have, unfortunately, we got a lot of Zoom fatigue, and it's become very difficult to watch shows online. And that is not a fault of anyone producing the shows, because everyone is giving their all. They're given the same amount of blood, sweat, and tears they gave when they were on stage. But what Kieran said earlier is true. It's not the same, which is why I fully believe it will come back around, because there's no way you can approximate a live performance or being in the presence of live music or being in the presence of art. You just can't. So the best way that you can support it right now is to donate.
Yeah, I would echo that. If you are able to financially renew that membership to your favorite museum, even if it's not open, that's what I've done. I know I won't be able to go through those doors for a while, but I love that institution, and I'm going to continue to renew my membership so that they can survive. For visual artists, follow them on social media, call them, email them. Do you have work available? Again, if you're able to support them in that way, buy their work. They don't have exhibitions. They might not be able to show at the gallery that they normally show with. And so they have that much less access to potential buyers of their work. So reach out to them and see how you can support them. I think also as an administrator, I feel a responsibility to be constantly keeping abreast of all of the different resources at the state and federal level that might be available to artists, so that if they ask me for advice, or I can, or if I see something that might be a good fit for an artist I know, I send them those resources. Be sure you're applying for this. And then lastly, get involved wherever you're based in advocacy at the state and federal level. There's the proposal for this Creative Core program, hopefully to get moved forward in California. Do what you can to advocate and make sure that that happens, so that there's additional funding allocated for the arts.
And Kieran or Waka, anything to add as well?
No, I mean, Lauren, you really hit it right on the head. The thing I love that you said, and I want to amplify, is buy their art, whether that's, physical art, whether it's going to the show and donating to, whatever it is, I mean, it's all of those things. That's the only way that it's going to survive. Like Jason said, it's the donating of your time. And truly, even if your museum is open, for me, how I've been amplifying just local artists. So even in the city of Cleveland, in the museum, sure, I was moved and inspired by, we're all as workers in the art space, museum space, just obviously you want your art to be a reflection of the times in whatever you're doing. We're all advocates and activists for, a cause of progressing, the arts and equity and all of that. So for me, I found a way to give back to those local artists. So let's put their artwork on display in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Let's do that. Let's create some awareness. Let's add to your resume as well. So if you are in a place to do that too, or pitch things to your local museum, definitely do that. But it is donating for sure.
Yeah, and I'll just echo everybody and say, find whatever way you can invest in the art that you like and invest in it. If you got time, offer time. If you've got money, give money. If you've got viewership, watch something. It's really, the arts aren't super highly valued in this country in a normal time, right? And so like Lauren said, look to politics, start voting for people who are going to put money into the arts. We can come out of this, I think, placing a higher value on this thing that we were deprived of. And I think that can look like a lot of different things, as long as you are clear on what you're doing and you're putting what you got where you can put it. To end on a vague note, put what you got where you can put it.
And just to piggyback off that, it kind of also relates to the question on labor in the arts. These things often manifest themselves and play out in elections, whether local, state, federal, because they're tied to, grant organizations, art organizations that get money from the NEH, or here in California, Cal Humanities, California Arts Council, local budget initiatives that are, sometimes wrapped up in politics or part of other things. And, we've unfortunately seen this kind of larger systemic defunding of the arts over generations, and hopefully it doesn't take generations for it to come back, but definitely there's a political pressure to be put on getting, almost societal values put back on, or the societal values put back on some of these issues. And so we're unfortunately nearing the end of our hour here. This is such a great group and so many interesting things to talk about, and some questions we haven't got to yet, but just for the sake of everybody being able to offer some final thoughts, I just want to ask all the panelists for a few final words of advice. And there was a question we had, what could I do to make my resume stand out, but almost maybe tailoring these final advice to somebody, again, graduating, now and looking to enter the art world, whatever that is, however that is. What would you say to somebody just emerging from UC Riverside? And we could do this in alphabetical order again. So we'll start with Lauren.
So I think some of the things I shared, I would just reiterate, look for those paid internship, mentorship opportunities. And I will do a plug for a new mentorship program that we have open right now at the airport. If you go to our website, which is arts.san.org, you'll see a banner at the homepage about this. If you're a visual artist looking to gain hands-on experience working in public art, this is a paid opportunity to do so, where you get to experience kind of the life of a public art project. So look for those kinds of opportunities. Don't be afraid to try something. take those informational opportunities or informational interviews as well. Yeah, I think those are my sort of, I'll defer to my other colleagues to jump in. I think I've covered my advice.
Thank you, Lauren. Kieran.
Yeah, I would say, specifically for theater, I do think that it is a rude awakening when you get out of school in terms of what your theater life has been like in school and what it's going to be like out there. So the advice that I would give to anybody sort of re-entering the world after getting a degree from UCR is do your soul searching. Like, try to remember who you are and what you're into, and look for the people who are also into that thing. And art can look like lots of different things. It doesn't have to be what you get paid to do. It doesn't have to be what your career is. It does not have to be, you don't have to be famous for it. Any art that's put out there is worth something. So as you face down job interview after job interview, or audition after audition, or, rejection after rejection, whatever it is, just remember, no one can tell you can't do this thing. You can do it. It just might not look like what you thought it would.
Thank you. Jason.
Yeah, whatever it is, whatever your thing is, whether it's theater or whether it's film or art or macrame, I don't care what your thing is, you have to pursue it. If it's in there, you have to chase after it, and you have to be okay with evolving. I think what I went into college as and what I came out of college as and what I've become are vastly different things. And there was an initial struggle with that, like, no, this is the thing that I went in to do, so I have to do this. And it's like, that's the thing that you then went in to do. And now you're a different person. And now you've got different goals and you've got different things you want to pursue. So I think the important thing is to continue to evolve while still continuing to pursue whatever that art, or more aptly, whatever that passion of yours is, just to keep driving after that, and don't ever stop, because the moment you stop, the moment you get bogged down in the mud, it gets hard to pick up that emotional steam it takes to pick back up. Be okay with evolving and just keep going.
Thank you, Jason.
Oh, well, I resonate with all of that as well. My complete journey was very different. I didn't major in museum studies. So I would say, whatever truly like your passion is, like Kieran said, whatever it is, I just knew I loved teaching and I loved music. And so was able to really find one great thing that worked, and was able to really scratch an itch and grow in that, regardless of what it looks like. No job, and I say this to like my staff, I'm like, no one is bigger than the music, and I'll say that here, like, no one is bigger than the music. Whatever the music is, whatever the art is for you, we're all here as stewards to serve other people, to make this world a better place than when we left it. So whatever that career is, I was like, hey, I'm just gonna hustle, do this gig, because I know this is something that I love to do. Like, if I get to be, the way that I was working at the Grammy Museum made me feel like my times at UCR, at the theater, at the Fine Arts Theater. I was like, hey, I'm here again on the sidelines, but being in the box office, I get to go to this show for free, and I know we don't have shows and things like that in the same way, but whatever that gig is, whether it's like virtual access, the platforms that exist, do not limit yourself to whatever level it is. It could be so entry level, whatever. I was working at FedEx at the same time. I was like literally juggling 3 different jobs. So we're out here to, of course, make money and make it work, but your passion will take off. Here I was at the Grammy Museum, 10 years from starting out 2008, not even knowing. Now at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, it's been 2 years in Cleveland, and it's been a rock and roll ride, just from taking a chance. Like, I just say rock and roll, like literally just take that, and whatever you can, just really embrace that, embrace the music. Tom Petty is my mantra, like, just free falling, just free fall, just free fall. If the COVID if COVID-19 ain't taught us nothing else, it's been to just really pivot. And so to this new graduating class, just free fall, kids. Free fall, baby. Like, that's it.
As beautifully said, and what a way to go out to a Tom Petty. So I'd like to thank Laura, Kieran, Jason, and Waka for their time, their generosity, and commitment to UCR and the Alumni Association. Everyone's busy, so just taking this hour to speak to all of us here and the students is really great, and the insights and advice you shared make me especially proud to be part of the UCR community, and again, reaffirming this notion of community that all of us still could get back together and UCR could keep this going is really, really great. And thank you to all the Alumni Association staff that put these events on as well. And on behalf of the University of California, Riverside, thank you all of you out there in Zoom land for joining us today for our Industry Insights event. It was a pleasure to connect virtually with all of you, and hopefully you've gained some valuable insights and advice from this. So everyone will receive a follow-up email containing a recording of this webinar. Please visit alumni.ucr.edu/career-center for further details on upcoming episodes and to view recordings of past webinars. And please also sign up for the UCR Career Network, a free online networking and mentorship platform. You see it on your screen right now that the Alumni Association launched last quarter, and Highlanders can join by visiting careernetwork.ucr.edu. So again, thank you all for joining us. Enjoy the rest of your day, evening, morning, wherever you're seeing this from, whenever you're seeing this. And again, thank you so much for being with us tonight.
Bye. Thanks for
Thank you
having
all.
us. Go Highlanders.